Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and welcome to Ummah Radio. You are listening to the Mustalahul Hadeeth class with myself, Abu Mus'ab. Alright, so we are still busy with the kitab Muqaddimatun fi Usulil Hadeeth of Maulana Abdul Haq al-Dihlawi rahimahullah. And tonight inshallah we will be beginning the 7th chapter, which is beginning on page 78. This 7th chapter now deals with the various types of weak and authentic ahadith. As we learnt in the past that there are authentic, which is sahih, there's hasan, which is good, and then there's da'if ahadith. And we did a couple of terms which went in between, so now it's basically putting a bit of things a little bit more into context. So then to begin with, Bismillahi walhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. He says, الفصل السابع في تعدد مراتب الضعيف والصحيح وغيره وبعض اصطلاحات الترمذي. He says this 7th chapter, it deals with the different varying levels of weak and authentic and others, meaning Hasan ahadith. And he says, and also some of the terminologies of Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah. I could explain to you what he means by the varying levels of weak and authentic, but since the kitab actually deals with that point itself, so let's do it as we go along with the kitab itself. So he says, the first one, he says, al-da'if. He says, الحديث الضعيف هو الذي فقد فيه الشرائط المعتبرة في الصحة والحسن كلا أو بعضا ويذم راويه بشذوذ أو نكارة أو علة. In a nutshell, as we discussed what a da'if hadith is, he says it is such a hadith which is lacking in those considered characteristics, those considered requirements in order for the hadith to be either sahih or hasan. It's either all the qualities are missing or some of them are missing, and that is sufficient for it to be termed as being da'if. And he says the narrator of such a hadith is being criticized from the point of either shudud, from being shadh, nakara, being from the term munkar, and illa, as we did the term mu'allal previously. And if you look at footnote number 1 over here, he says, يعني أن راوي للحديث الضعيف يتهم بالشذوذ أو النكارة أو العلة أو غير ذلك من أسباب ضعف الحديث كالإرسال والانقطاع والاضطراب وغير ذلك. He says that the narrator of a hadith, of a weak hadith, he is accused of either being shadh or munkar or mu'allal or any of the other types which causes a hadith to be weak. For example, irsal, making it mursal, or inqita, narrating a munqati hadith, or idtirab, which in a muttarib form, all terms that would be passed by. So previously we did a lot of terminologies of the varying types of weak hadith. So let me put it in a nutshell. Da'if is a very vast category. Within da'if, there are varying levels. Some are weaker than others, and the varying types are, for example, a shadh hadith is da'if, a munkar hadith is da'if, a mu'allal hadith is da'if, a munqad hadith is da'if, a mudtarib hadith is da'if, and of course, according to the various ulama, some would put the mursal hadith as da'if, and so on and so forth. So you have all these varying types of da'if hadith coming under the larger umbrella, which is just simply termed as being da'if. So he says, وَتَكُونُ هَذِهِ الْعَوَارِض هِيَ أَسْبَابُ الضَّعْفِ. And all these sort of things like irsal, inqita, idtirab, these are the asbab, these are the causes for the hadith to be termed as being da'if. So what we are dealing with here is that we have a term as da'if, which is thrown around generally today as you find it. The hadith is weak, the hadith is da'if, as is normally said. You'll see people throwing it around left, right and center. But when it actually comes down to it, then it can be broken down into any of a number of various different types depending on what the particular flaw is in that particular narration. Like he mentions now, either it's munqati, it's mudtarib, it's okay, if you take it in mursal, or it's shadh, it's munkar, it's mu'allal, whether it's now from the point of mudallas, everything of that sort, all comes under this large umbrella over here. So he moves on further, he says, تعدد أقسام الضعيف, the various types of ضعيف أحاديث. He says وبهذا الاعتبار يتعدد أقسام الضعيف ويكثر إفرادا وتركيبا. He says, now based on this definition here of the varying types of ضعيف, you come to know that there are a number of different types of weak ahadith. And he says that they increase in singular form and in a plural gathered form as well. Anyway, let's see footnote number 2 what he means by this. He says يعني تارة تفقد صفة واحدة من صفات الصحيح وتارة عددا من الصفات. What he means is that sometimes singular, sometimes many, is that one of the qualities, which is what was dealt with earlier when he said that some or all of the requirements for the hadith to be sahih or hasan are missing, and that's what terms it to be now as da'if. So he says sometimes you find that one characteristic or one condition is only missing, so it just falls lower than a hasan hadith, and that is sufficient for it to be termed as being da'if. And sometimes it's a number of things which is missing, and that it would also still be called a da'if hadith in a broad sense, but obviously the level of authenticity would now be lower because it's on a lower level of being a da'if hadith. So he says in some cases one characteristic is missing, and in sometimes it's a number of characteristics which are missing. He says وَبِذَلِكَ تَكْثُرُ أَقْسَامَ الْحَدِيثِ الضَّعِيفِ, and for that reason you have a number of different types and levels of weak hadith. He says قال ابن الصلاح وأطنب أبو حاتم ابن حبان البستي في تقسيمه فبلغ به 50 قسما إلا واحدة. He says Imam Ibn al-Salah rahimahullah has written that Imam Abu Hatim ibn Hibban al-Busti rahimahullah, he made a number of different types, like listing, like we passed by a munkar, mu'allal, shadh, mudtarib, what other types, like if you take that, what is now for example 4 types, and we did other types as well, but for example now let's just work on there being 4 types. He says, but Imam Abu Hatim ibn Hibban al-Busti, he went into very much detail in when he broke it down into various categories, and he came out to having 49 categories. 50 minus 1 meaning 49 categories. So he had listed there being 49 different levels of weak ahadith. Obviously that's not a viewpoint that we follow to reach 49, but in any case it shows you that the ahadith may be termed da'if in a general sense, but there are so many different factors which come into play which will range the weakness level of that hadith to such a wide variety based on what exactly the weakness is in that particular narration. Alright, so that's the end of page 78. Let's just move on to a little bit onto page 79. He says تعدد مراتب الصحيح والحسن, the varying types now of a hadith being sahih and a hadith being hasan. So you have a hadith which is sahih, but it has various levels. So 2 hadith are sahih, but one is more sahih than the other one. And likewise 2 are hasan, but one is more hasan than the other one. That's now what we're dealing with. Like da'if had varying stages, likewise sahih and hasan as well also have varying stages, where some are more authentic even than the other one. So he says ومراتب الصحيح والحسن لذاتهما ولغيرهما أيضا تتعدد بتفاوت المراتب والدرجات في كمال الصفات المعتبرة المأخوذة في مفهوميهما مع وجود الاشتراك في أصل الصحة والحسن. He says that the varying levels of sahih and hasan لذاتهما ولغيرهما. And this is what we did previously, that you had sahihun li ghayrihi, intrinsically it is authentic. Hasanun li ghayrihi, intrinsically it is hasan. And then we did sahihun li ghayrihi, that intrinsically perhaps it may be hasan, but due to some other external factor it reaches the level of sahih. And likewise intrinsically it may be weak, but due to some other supporting evidence it get raised up to the level of Hasan. So it is Hasanun li ghayrihi. That was something we did pass by previously. So he says that on this level now of Hasan and Sahih, you have those which are Sahih and Hasan li dhatihi, and those which are Hasan and Sahih li ghayrihi. And these, they differ in levels based on the how perfect the required characteristics and qualities are for the particular hadith, which was taken from their understandings, while keeping to the actual requirement for a hadith to be Sahih or Hasan. Basically, let's just look at, if we just understand this in the context of the definitions which we had passed by previously, that for a Sahih hadith, these are the requirements over here, and or for a hadith to be Hasan, these are the requirements over here, that the person must not be a liar, he must not be this type, he must not be narrating something contrary to someone who's more authentic, all those sort of things like that. So keeping to that principles over there, then basing on this fact that you have an authentic hadith over here, it can now differ from that level as to, although we would still call them at the end of the day all Sahih or all Hasan, but they will again differ in how Sahih or how Hasan it is. So that again is something you will come down to when you're dealing with an individual hadith, and inshallah you'll see now a little bit more on it in a bit. But anyway, to go a bit further, he says, وَالْقَوْمُ ضَبْطُوا مَرَاتِبَ الصِّحَّةِ وَعَيَّنُوهَا وَذَكَرُوا أَمْثِلَتَهَا مِنَ الْأَسَانِيدِ وقالوا اسم العدالة والضبط يشمل رجالها كلها ولكن بعضها فوق بعض. He says, and the people, but what he means here is the muhadditheen, they had placed down the levels of sihha and they specified it, and they mentioned examples for it from the asanid, and they said that the name, the ismul adalati wa dabt, that when we speak of adala and dabt, this encompasses the narrators, all of the narrators in the hadith, but some of them are higher than others, meaning this person is adil and has his dabt and everything, and likewise the man above him and the man above him and the man above him, but some of them are higher than others. And this is obviously not every narrator, although he may be trustworthy, although he may be reliable, but not everyone is necessarily on the exact same level. You have one person who is a noble, is a trustworthy, is a reliable narrator and everything. Then you have, for example, let's say Imam Malik rahimahullah, who would be now on a higher level than a normal man in his time. Just for example, so you have Imam Malik and you have another person in the time of Imam Malik. Imam Malik is the Imam of the people of Medina, for example, and this other man is just a normal person from Medina, for example. So naturally Imam Malik is on a higher level than this man. So although this man may be 100%, he's a pious person and everything, but Imam Malik, maybe he's on a higher level of piety, and so his narration is even more authentic than this person. Plus, from the fact is, the understanding Imam Malik had now of ahadith and everything like this here, his knowledge, his dabt and everything would be on a more higher level, so his narration is even more authentic than that other person over there. So that is now what we are speaking about. So anyway, now he says, he deals a little bit on this topic. He says, Asahul Asanid. What is the most authentic Asanid? That when we're talking about, and you may have heard this term before, the golden chain. If you've heard when people talk about a hadith and they say this is the golden chain. So the ulama differ on what exactly the golden chain is. But anyway, here he says, وأما إطلاق الصح الأسانيد على سند مخصوص على الإطلاق ففيه اختلاف. He says that to make a general unrestricted statement that this is the most authentic of asanid with regards to a particular sanad, then there's ikhtilaf, meaning the ulama differ what is the golden chain. He says فقال بعضهم أصح الأسانيد زين العابدين عن أبيه الحسين رضي الله عنه عن جده علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه. So he says that some of the muhadditheen, they say the most authentic sanad is Imam Zainul Abidin, who is Imam Hassan Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, meaning the grandson of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu. So it would be Imam Zainul Abidin reporting from his father, Imam Hazrat Hussein radiallahu anhu, who reports from Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, who reports from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This is what some of the muhadditheen said. This is the golden chain, the most authentic. That if you find a hadith coming from this chain, it's the most authentic. That's one viewpoint. Another one, he says, وَقِيلَ Malik عن نافع عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنه. Another viewpoint. Okay, question. Imam Zainul Abidin was who? Imam Zainul Abidin was the grandson of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, the son of Hazrat Hussein radiallahu anhu. His name is Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. So he's Ali bin Hussein bin Ali, and he was known as Zainul Abidin. Imam Ali Zainul Abidin. One of the very most famous of the Ahlul Bayt. He is one of our Ummah, and the Shia try to claim him for one of theirs. So the Imam that the Shia claim for themselves, Imam, obviously, Hazrat Hussein radiallahu anhu, Imam Zainul Abidin, Imam Baqir, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, Musa al-Kadhim, all of those Imams that the Shia claim for themselves are actually Imams of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, who had absolutely nothing to do with the Kuffar Shia. They just try to ascribe themselves to these people, but they are in fact free of them. So Imam Zainul Abidin and his children, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, Imam Baqir, all of them, they're all Imams of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And in fact, there's if you were to go do, like, you can go on YouTube. In fact, some of the ulama have given lectures on the life of Imam Zainul Abidin. He's one of the most famous of the Ahlul Bayt, whose lives have been given lectures on, at least in English, that you can find today. You know, you do find on the other Ahlul Bayt as well, but he's the most famous of them all. Anyway, that's a bit off topic. So Imam Zainul Abidin, he's the grandson of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, the great grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So that was one viewpoint of some ulama, that they said this is the golden chain, the most authentic hadith is reported when you find it coming through this chain. The second one is, he says, وَقِيلَ Malik عن نافع عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما. He says another viewpoint is that Imam Malik rahimahullah reports it from Nafi', who is the freed slave of Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, who in turn reports it from Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, who reports it from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So again, to repeat, Imam Malik rahimahullah reports it from the freed slave Nafi', who reports it from his master Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu, who in turn reports it from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this one is the viewpoint which has been chosen by Imam Bukhari rahimahullah actually as being the golden chain, and this is actually the one which you will find most common being referred to as the golden chain. Malik and Nafi' and Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma. That's how you will find what is commonly termed today the golden chain. But anyway, as you can see, other muhadditheen, they had differing opinions as to what exactly the golden chain is. Now, although he only mentions 3 types over here, the other ulama had mentioned various other chains as well. Like this would you be termed, for example, the golden chain. Others would call it from the chain of Afdaliyah, the most virtuous chain, and stuff of that sort. But anyway, this is here, he's just giving you 3 viewpoints of the ulama as to what they deemed the golden chain to be. So those were 2 chains so far. The third one, he says, وَقِيلَ الزُّهْرِي عن سالم عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما. He says a third chain which the ulama had mentioned is that Imam az-Zuhri, again one of the famous Imam, reports from Imam Salim, who reported from Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma. So this is out of these 3 chains, this is the least famous one. The most famous is Malik and Nafi' and Ibn Umar, and the second most famous would be the one of Imam Zainul Abidin rahimahullah. But like I say, the one which is most common, most well known, is the second one from Imam Malik, from Nafi', from Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma. So anyway, he says, وَالْحَقُّ أَنَّ الْحُكْمَ عَلَى إِسْنَادٍ مَخْصُوصٍ بِالْأَصَحِّيَّةِ عَلَى الْإِطْلَاقِ غَيْرُ جَائِزٍ. إلا أن في الصحة مراتب عليا وعدة من الأسانيد يدخل فيها. He says, but the reality, the truth of the matter is that to make a ruling on a particular sanad that it is the most authentic unrestrictedly, he says this is not permissible. But except in the fact that when it comes to authenticity, then there is varying levels of how high it goes, and many of the asanid enters into that particular level. So in this case, what he's saying is, like, if you take the view of Malik and Nafi and Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, then the other two sanads would also be authentic, but this one would be more authentic than the others. So you're not going to make an unrestricted statement, but you are saying that from an authenticity basis, this one is more authentic than the others. That's basically what he's saying over here. He says, ولو قيد بقيد بأن يقال الصح أسانيد البلد الفلاني أو في الباب الفلاني أو في المسألة الفلانية يصح والله أعلم. He says that if you're making a statement which seemingly seems to be unrestricted, but there is a restriction to it. For example, you say that أصح أسانيد البلد الفلاني, that the most authentic sanad of the town is that particular sanad, or in this particular chapter the most authentic sanad is that particular sanad over there, or in this particular mas'ala here, this particular issue, that chain there is the most authentic. Then you say that this here will be permissible. Wallahu a'lam. So what he's saying is that you don't make a blanket unrestricted statement that of all sanads, the whole world right over, the most authentic is this particular sanad over here. But rather you can say, let's say for example, we make an example up and you say that as far as the chapter of making wudu is concerned, the hadith of the Hadith Ali radiallahu anhu showing the method of wudu, that one is the most authentic. For example, let us say something like that. Then you say, in that case, there's no problem in saying something like that. But you don't make a statement and say, for example, this is the golden chain and it is the most authentic of all asanid. So if any sanad comes with a sanad different to that one, it's not as authentic as that one. That's basically what he's trying to say over here. So that was now giving you a little bit on the point of the hadith having all being authentic, all being hasan, or even all being weak. But despite that, they differ in levels of authenticity and they differ in levels of weakness. Now, there's a lot more that could be mentioned on here, but I think he mentions it later on in the kitab, if I'm not mistaken. For example, that you have hadith, we have a term that we normally use, which is termed as muttafaqun alayh, agreed upon by both Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim rahimahumullah. For example, you have that term, which means that the hadith is declared authentic by both Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim rahimahumullah. Both of them report such a hadith. So contrasting a hadith like that compared to one which is only reported by Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, for example, then the muttafaqun alayh hadith would hold a higher level of authenticity than the one reported by Imam Bukhari rahimahullah alone. And obviously, if Imam Bukhari rahimahullah reports a hadith and Imam Ibn Majah rahimahullah reports a hadith, Imam Bukhari is more higher, so his narration would be more authentic than the narration which comes in Ibn Majah. But that, inshallah, like I say, if I'm not mistaken, it definitely is coming later on. I think perhaps in the next chapter or so we'll come to that point over there, as on the books of hadith and which one is the most authentic of them all. But anyway, we leave that for when we come to that point. Now we're coming to another point here, which is the Istilaah at-tirmidhi, the terminologies of Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah. The reason why there's actually a whole chapter specified for Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah is because he had a totally different outlook where a hadith is concerned, and he did not explain it in detail. That is why the muhadditheen and the ulama have all these differing viewpoints based on how they interpreted the words of Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah. For example, when a normal muhaddith would grade a hadith, they would say, for example, هذا حديث صحيح, this hadith is sahih. Simple, one single term. But Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah, he was not like that. He would normally term a hadith using two sometimes 3 or so terms. For example, هذا حديث حسن صحيح. This hadith is حسن صحيح. Now, what exactly is meant by this حسن صحيح? This is where the difference of opinion amongst the ulama stems from. So, here he'll go into a little bit of the terminologies. He says, من عادة الترمذي أن يقول في جامعه حديث حسن صحيح حديث غريب حسن حديث حسن غريب صحيح. He says, it's from the habit of Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah that he mentions in his Jami', which is Jami' at-tirmidhi or Sunan at-tirmidhi, however you prefer to term it. He comments on his own hadith and he say hadithun hasanun sahih. That is, hadith is hasan and sahih. Or he say this hadith is gharibun hasan. It's gharib and it's hasan. Or he says that this hadith is hasan, it's gharib and it's sahih. Now it's like 3 terms, one after the other. It's hasan, it's gharib and it's sahih. So what exactly is meant by this? You say, ولا شبهة في جواز اجتماع الحسن والصحة بأن يكون حسنا لذاته وصحيحا لغيره وكذلك في اجتماع الغرابة والصحة كما أسلفنا. He says there should be no doubt in your mind with regards to the permissibility of joining the terms Hasan and Sahih. For example, it is Hasanun lidatihi. It is authentic intrinsically in its own self. It's Hasan, but Sahihun li ghayrihi. Due to other supporting evidences, it gets raised to the level of Sahih. So this is one way some muhadditheen have looked at this terminology of Imam Bukhari, that when he say هذا حديث حسن صحيح, that in its own self that hadith is hasan, but due to the other evidences it is now reaching the level of sahih. This is one way they have looked at it. He says similarly there shouldn't be a problem in joining a hadith. He's saying هذا حديث غريب صحيح, that the hadith has gharaba, it's gharib, and it's Sihha, I mean it's Sahih as well, like how we have previously passed, that Gharib don't mean hadith is weak, it simply means it has only come through one chain. So we say these are something which, these 2 terms, for example, like this here, is not something that should cause you put any doubt in your mind or anything of the sort. It's something which we have done and which is acceptable, so there's no problem with that. Now we come that where does the problem lie then in that case? So we're moving on now to page 81. He says إشكال اجتماع الغرابة والحسن, that what is the problem, the ishkal in joining a hadith being gharib and being hasan. He says وأما اجتماع الغرابة والحسن فيستشكلونه بأن الترمذي اعتبر في الحسن تعدد الطرق فكيف يكون غريبا. He says that when you find a hadith which is gharib and hasan, then the ulama have found this to be the ishkal, the fault, or rather a problem in this regard, because Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah, for him a hasan hadith is a hadith which has a number of roads, a number of chains. So how can it be gharib? Meaning, if you say a hasan has more than one chain and you're saying it's gharib, meaning it has one chain, so how does it have, it's like this hadith has many chains but it has one chain. That's basically what he's saying. It's like it's a self-contradicting, it's an oxymoron. It don't seem to go along with each other. It's contradicting itself. So he explains now what is the answer to that ishkal. So he says the jawabul ishkal. What is the answer to this problem here now? He says ويجيبون بأن اعتبار تعدد الطرق في الحسن ليس على الإطلاق بل في قسم منه وحيث حكم باجتماع الحسن والغرابة فالمراد به قسم آخر. He says that the ulama have responded to this argument saying that the consideration of a hasan hadith having ta'addud al-turuq, meaning a number of chains, he says this is not unrestricted, but it's only for a specific type of hasan hadith. So when Imam at-tirmidhi joins and says that hadith is hasan and gharib, then what he means by this is the other type of hasan, not the one that has numerous chains. So in any case, all of this here is one particular viewpoint of the ulama as to how they take these terms of Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah. He says وقال بعضهم إنه أشار بذلك إلى اختلاف الطرق بأن جاء في بعض الطرق غريبا وفي بعضها حسنا. This is now another outlook of some other ulama. He says that how they address this argument over here, or how they understand it in their Question, what's that other type of Hasan? Hasan is Hasan. As far as the term goes, Hasan is Hasan. But what he means is that you have Hasan with one set of meaning from from a number of chains, and Hasan which don't come from a number of chains. That's basically what he's talking about. So it's not as though whenever the term Hasan is used that it means it comes from numerous chains. That was basically what he was trying to say. So basically we're talking here now on Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah's definition of the terms. Not the terms that how we regularly use it, but rather, as you can see, Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah had a unique way as to how he used the terms. That is why you find all this ikhtilaf and things coming out as a result of the ulama understanding how Imam at-Tirmidhi used those or meant those terms. So anyway, the second viewpoint over here, some of the other ulama, they said that when Imam at-Tirmidhi says a hadith is gharib and hasan, then what is actually intending here by is he's commenting on the different chains of the hadith. So he says that through one of the chains of this hadith, it is gharib, and in another chain, this hadith is hasan. So therefore, the hadith is hasanun gharib, or gharibun hasan, whichever way, it's the same thing. So that is what he's meaning, how some ulama interpret this term of Imam at-Tirmidhi. Moving on to another way, he says, وَقِيلَ الْوَاوُ بِمَعْنَى أَوْ بأنه يشك ويتردد في أنه غريب أو حسن لعدم معرفته جزما. Now there's another viewpoint, and as you know, when the term qila is used, it's generally come for a viewpoint which is weak. He says that some ulama, they held the opinion that when he says هذا حسن غريب, he says that it's actually like Hasanun wa Gharib. That's actually what is being said. So he's saying here that when Imam at-Tirmidhi uses this term like Hasanun Gharib, which like I say is Hasanun wa Gharib, then he says that this wow is actually meaning in the meaning of the word oh, meaning not and but rather or. Oh means or, and wa means and. Although wa can also mean or as well, but generally it's used to mean and. So he's saying, when you say this, هذا حديث حسن وغريب, he's actually meaning هذا حديث حسن أو غريب. That not, if we would translate it generally, this hadith is غريب or hasan. But he's saying here that, this hadith is hasan and غريب. And using the meaning of أو, it will mean this hadith is hasan or غريب. That's what he's saying. So, بأنه يشك ويتردد. So, what these ulama say, that when Imam at-Tirmidhi used a term like this, then it's because he is doubting, he is hesitant, he's not certain, is the hadith gharib or is it hasan? Why? Because he was not 100% certain of its status, that is it really gharib or is it hasan? So therefore he used the term like this. So this was another viewpoint how some other ulama looked at it. But as you can see, this is what is looked at as a weak opinion, this third view over here. Anyway, there's another viewpoint, more ulama holding a different viewpoint. He says وقيل المراد بالحسن ها هنا ليس معناه الاصطلاحي بل اللغوي بمعنى ما يميل إليه الطبع وهذا القول بعيد جدا. Again, using the term qila, you can tell that already from the outset this is a weak opinion. He says another group of ulama, they held the opinion. He says al-muradu bil-hasan. When Imam at-Tirmidhi says the hadith here is hasan, he's not meaning the Mustalahul Hadeeth term of hasan, but rather he's using the linguistic term, meaning it is something nice, something that you incline towards. But he say this opinion is ba'idun jiddan, it's very far-fetched. It got no relation to anything at all, that Imam at-Tirmidhi would be commenting on a hadith and saying, this hadith sounds nice. Things like that. He's not dealing with that. He's dealing from a perspective of Mustalahul Hadeeth, that this hadith is authentic or not authentic. Not this one sounds nice. Okay, another question over here. What do you mean by weak opinion? What I mean by weak opinion is something which we passed by, we did in tafsir, and I mentioned it when we did this class as well, is that when terms like qila is used in the kitab, when an opinion is put forth and it begins with waqila or qila, then this here is a sign to you that this opinion is considered to be weak, at least weak in the opinion of the particular author of that particular kitab. So in this case here, Maulana Abdul Haq al-Dihlawi is considering this opinion to be weak. It may not be weak to everybody, it may be weak only in his opinion, but it's considered to be weak. But in a case like this, these two opinions here are indeed weak. As far as the majority is concerned, they would consider these two opinions here to be weak. The most accepted viewpoint is the first one, which was, like for example, it is Hasanun li nafsihi gharibun صحيح لنفسه غريب لغيره. You know, حسن لنفسه صحيح لغيره. That sort of meaning. That's what the majority of the ulama went towards, that definition. So the first definition we did here from what the muhadditheen interpreted Imam at-Tirmidhi's terminologies to be, that is what the majority is upon. And it's a very weak opinion these last 2 years that Imam at-Tirmidhi was doubtful, or that he was speaking from a linguistic rather than a Mustalahul Hadeeth perspective. Okay, just before we move on any further, just go to footnote number 1. He says, هذه الأقوال في تفسير قول الإمام الترمذي حسن صحيح وحسن غريب تورد في عامة كتب المصطلح، وظاهر فيها التردد وعدم اطمئنان. وقد بحث في هذا الموضوع الأستاذ نور الدين عطر في كتابه الموازنة بين الصحيحين وجامع الترمذي بحثا موسعا، وتوصل إلى نتائج علمية مقنعة ذكر خلاصتها في كتابه منهج النقد في علوم الحديث. يقول: قول الترمذي حسن صحيح يفيد أنه تعددت أسانيد الحديث وبلغ درجة الصحة، وجمع الحسن إلى الصحة ليبين أنه خرج من حد الغرابة. He says that, it's going on here, he says that these varying opinions that have been mentioned here in interpreting what Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah meant, like Hasan and Sahih and things like this here, this is something you will find in the majority of the books of Mustalahul Hadeeth. All the ulama always giving different opinions in defining what is meant by this. He says that, and it's quite clear that there is, there's no certainty of from the perspective of the muhadditheen, as to, what exactly for certain did Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah mean, because he never explained to us what he meant when he used these terms. It's only now, later on, that the muhadditheen were now trying to understand what Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah meant by these terms like this here. So anyway, he says here that Sheikh Nuruddin Aitar, he wrote a kitab, and anyway, he did a lot of research into this thing here, and in the ending he mentioned that when Imam at-Tirmidhi says Hasanun Sahih, what he means is that there are a number of asanid for the hadith, and it reaches the level of authenticity. So he takes the hadith which may have been Hasan and raises it to the level of Sihha, so to explain and to clear that the fact that it has exited now from being gharib to now perhaps having more than one sanad. So basically, the very first definition, like I said, which the majority of ulama are upon, that it's for Hasanun li nafsihi, Sahihun li ghayrihi. That's basically what the end result is of this whole long story. That is the viewpoint of the majority. Okay, if we move on to the next page, page 82, as you can see, matan, the kitab itself is not mentioned there, just a couple of dots, meaning that the footnote is so long that it's running on from the previous page. So just to comment on the second point, he says قول الترمذي حسن غريب. He says إن كانت الغرابة في السند والمتن وهو الذي لم يروي إلا بإسناد واحد، فهذا يعني أن الحديث حسن لذاته، وقد يحكم عليه بذلك لدلائل تقوي معناه. He says that when Imam at-Tirmidhi now used the term Hasanun Gharib, he says that if the gharaba, this gharib, this term of it being gharib, comes from the sanad perspective or the matan perspective, and it is such a hadith which has come through only one sanad, meaning the linguistic definition of, the Mustalahul Hadeeth definition of gharib, which we had passed by previously, that a gharib hadith means one which has come through one chain. Then he says, this means that the hadith is hasanun li dhatihi. It is hasan intrinsically, in its own self, it is hasan, but وَقَدْ يَحْكُمُ عَلَيْهِ بِذَلِكَ لِدَلَائِلٍ تُقَوِّيَ مَعْنَاهُ, and he has given the ruling of upon the hadith due to various other proofs which strengthens its meaning. He says, وَإِذَا كَانَتِ الْحَدِيثُ غَرِيبًا فِي السَّنَدِ فَقَط وَهُوَ الَّذِي اشْتَهَرَ مِنْ عِدَّةِ أَوْجُهٍ ثم جاء من طريق غير مشهورة فهذا متفق مع تعريف الحديث الحسن عند الترمذي لأنه يصدق عليه أنه روي من غير وجه. He says, but if the hadith is gharib in the sanad alone, and it is such a hadith which is it is mashhur, meaning it comes from many pathways, ثم جاء من طريق غير مشهورة. So it's mashhur, it comes from a number of pathways, but then it also comes from another chain which is not mashhur. Then he says, this is agreed upon what the definition of the Hasan hadith according to Imam at-tirmidhi, because يصدق عليه أنه روي من غير وجه. It is, it is something which is now accepted that this hadith has been reported from more than one angle. Okay, that can seem to be a little bit confusing over there. So just what he's trying to say is that here, that as far as Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah is concerned, when he uses the term as the hadith being gharib, and this is something we did pass by when we did the term gharib, that not everybody necessarily took the term gharib to mean a hadith coming from only one chain. So what he's saying over here is that this hadith is hasan, and it's a mashhur hasan hadith. It's coming from maybe, let's say, 3 chains, but then it also has another chain from another angle which is not mashhur, and this chain here, for example, may be gharib. So something this is now again, but this is only now the conclusion of Sheikh Nuruddin Aitar. This is what, after his research, this was the conclusion he came to. So, like I say, and in fact, as he mentioned it when he, in these opening lines, he says that you'll find it in every book of Mustalahul Hadeeth. Is a whole lot of difference of opinion as to what exactly did Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah mean when he commented and called a hadith hasanun sahih, hasanun gharib, and all these sort of things like this here. Because Imam at-tirmidhi never just came across and say hada hadithun hasan, hada hadithun gharib, hada hadithun sahih, like that. He always made it a double barrel, triple barrel, putting hasan, gharibun, sahih, and everything of the sort like that, putting a number of terms. So that is why you find all of this extra confusion and stuff in that regard. Alright, so anyway, that's now just on that point. Like I say, if you want to just wrap it up in a nutshell, then we take the viewpoint, which was the first one. Okay, question: is it only Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah who placed the terms together like this, or have others also done it? Now, this was the signature way of Imam at-tirmidhi rahimahullah to do it in this manner, saying hasanun sahih, hasanun gharib, and things like this. The other ai would just give a straight ruling. Ibn Majah, Imam Abu Dawud, and Imam Bukhari, Imam Tirmidhi, Imam Ahmad, they would just simply say هذا حديث ضعيف, هذا حديث صحيح, for example, like that. But Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah, this was his way. He made this way of using 2 terms, 3 terms like this. That is why it's known as being the terminology of Imam at-Tirmidhi and not known from anybody else besides him. Yes, it's because he never explained his reasons. That's why we have this interpretation. Obviously, Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah is a very senior, one of the most senior figures in the where a hadith is concerned. So obviously, Sunan at-Tirmidhi is a very important book of hadith. So it's not a kitab that can be put to the side. He's a direct student of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah. Imam at-Tirmidhi, he's a direct student of Imam Bukhari. So, and it's one of the the major 6 books of hadith. So it's not something which can be put to the side. So obviously it was necessary to understand that how is Imam at-Tirmidhi grading this hadith, and you'll always find Imam at-Tirmidhi saying, I asked Imam Bukhari the grading of this hadith, and he said this, and he said that, and he said that, how Imam Bukhari graded the hadith. And of course he grades the hadith out in his own right as well. So because of the fact that he never explained or wrote down what exactly does he mean by these terminologies when he put two terms together like this, that is why the muhadditheen who later came along and were now to explain the basically we call it the manhaj of Imam at-Tirmidhi now to the follow-up students, the teaching the kitab as well and things, they required now to understand and teach what exactly was Imam at-Tirmidhi coming to when he called the hadith Hasanun Sahih, for example, and things like this here. That is why you ended up with these various interpretations. Alright, so anyhow, that was now the end of page 82, and it is the end of chapter number 7, and we will stop on this point here inshallah and begin with chapter 8 next week. But if there's any questions you have with regards to anything in the class, you can feel free to ask your questions here now. Okay, question, is there a third part on the footnote? Yes, there is a third part on the footnote, but it's basically similar to previously. But anyway, let's look at the footnote. He says, قول الترمذي حسن صحيح غريب. That when Imam at-Tirmidhi says the hadith is Hasan, it's Sahih, and it's Gharib, then what is meant by this? He says, إن كان غريبا سندا فقط فالمعنى على ما ذكرنا في حسن صحيح وإن كان غريبا سندا أو متنا فيكون قد ذكر الحسن هنا لإفادة أنه ورد ما يوافق معنى الحديث. He says that if it's gharib from the point of a sanad alone, then the meaning is that what we have mentioned previously, that it is like Hasanun Sahih, meaning in the first definition, this is now the third one here. When I say third definition, I mean from the third point of this footnote, not from the 4 viewpoints mentioned in the actual kitab itself. So he says, but if it's gharib from the point of the sanad and the matan or the matan, from it can be from the matan or the sanad perspective, he says then when he mentions Hasan here, it's to give you the benefit that it has been reported in the sense that it conforms to the meaning of another hadith as well. أما أن يكون الحديث غريبا سندا أو متنا ولا يكون ثمة شيء يوافق معناه فهذا التعبير يفيد التردد في الحديث بين الصحة والحسن للخلاف بين العلماء فيه أو عدم الجزم من المجتهد. So here he says that if the hadith is gharib from sanad or matan and you don't find it that it has any correspondence to another authentic hadith, then when he says here Hasanun Gharibun Sahih and things like this, then what this implies is that Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah was doubtful and he was hesitant, he was unsure whether it is Sahih or Hasan because of the ikhtilaf amongst the ulama, or maybe because he was uncertain from his own side as to is this hadith Sahih or Hasan or what. So basically what Sheikh Nuruddin Aitar here is doing is he's pulling all the viewpoints together and giving now a new definition basically, and he's saying that if you find it in this sense, then he was hesitant and doubtful, not like the third viewpoint of previously that said as a blanket statement Imam at-Tirmidhi was basically hesitant the whole time, that's why he used these terms like this here. So he say that if it corresponds to something authentic, then what he means is that intrinsically it is Hasan, but it gets raised to the level of Sahih. But if it don't correspond to something, to another hadith, then in that case it is that Imam at-Tirmidhi was maybe unsure or stuff of this sort over here. So that was now what the third part of this footnote here had mentioned, which is from the kitab of Sheikh Nuruddin Aitar. Wallahu a'lam. Alright, so seeing then as we have no further questions, we will then stop on the end of this page here, page 82, and next week inshallah we will begin from page 83, which is again another important chapter which will deal with the usage of a hadith as a hujjah, as a proof, meaning this hadith you want to use it as dalil. That's what the next chapter inshallah will deal with, but that is something which we will do next week inshallah. So until then we will end for now, and we say وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.